Hi, everybody. I'm Clara McKenna, and welcome to a talk with Barbara's Bookstores with author Anna Lee Huber. I write a historical mystery series myself, so I'm going to be asking her some questions that hopefully all y'all want to know as well. But for now, I'm going to let this wonderful lady introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And a big thank you to Clara for being willing to moderate this, and Barbara's Bookstores for hosting us. And I know they probably want us to say this. There's this lovely button down at the bottom, this green button where you can click and you can get 10% off to order a copy. And they have all kinds of books. So I'm sure, and Clara's books and all that. So there's that little plug. So yeah, I'm Anna Lee Huber, and I write historical mysteries. I write the Lady Derby mystery series, which is 1830s Scotland, and then I write the Verity Kent mysteries, which is post-World War I England, mostly England. It's kind of all over the place. And Murder Most Fair is the most recent book. And my heroine Verity in that series is she was a spy for the British Secret Service during the war. And the series kind of follows her after the war, and she keeps getting tugged into all of these mysteries that carry over from the war. She kind of has her own arch nemesis that's a bit like a Moriarty character. And in this fifth book, we see Verity is returning home for the first time since the war began. You know, in this era, so many of the young men and all people from the Spanish influenza died, and people had a really hard time dealing with their grief. They didn't get to mourn. They didn't get to bury their loved ones that died at war. And so she's, you know, had to bury her grief over her loss of her brother. Those of you who've read some of the earlier books in the series, and she, you know, wasn't able to really confront it. And so this is now late 1919. She's been avoiding going home. She's finally going home. She's going to have to confront these feelings. But before they leave, her great aunt, who is from Germany, shows up on her doorstep unexpectedly. And in Germany, because of the blockade, the conditions were absolutely horrid by the end of the war. People were just starving. There was nothing to eat. It was just very miserable conditions. And so many, they lost more soldiers than the British and all of that. So there's a lot of, you know, but there was a war, and on the British side, you know, the Germans were the enemy and they killed a lot of their men. And so in Britain, there's a lot of anti-German sentiment. And so it's a bit dangerous or a bit touchy having her great aunt there. So they decide they need to leave for Yorkshire earlier to get her out of London. And her German maid is there, and there's a lot going on back home in Yorkshire. And when the German maid is killed, Verity has to figure out whether someone's followed them there from her spying work, or whether there's a villager who's taken out their hatred in a very bad way. So,
Wow. Well, I'm reading Murder Most Fair and really enjoying it. And one of the questions I had about was, why did you have Verity come from Yorkshire? Have you been to Yorkshire? Do you have a special place in your heart for Yorkshire? Or tell us about your experience with Yorkshire.
Sure. Yeah. So I have visited Yorkshire. I actually have not been to the Dales, which is where I set this. We were actually supposed to go in 2020. And then COVID happened, obviously, so we couldn't go. But I have been to Yorkshire. I've been to York. I've been to the North Yorkshire Moors and Whitby and some other areas in Yorkshire. And it's such a large, broad area of northern England, and it's beautiful. And I'd always wanted to set a book in the Dales. And if you've never been to the Yorkshire Dales, think All Creatures Great and Small. That's where that series is set, and where they filmed both versions of it, the newer one and the older one. So that gives you an idea of the, setting, and it's just beautiful, and there's so much to work with. And there's also a certain mentality. It's a very rural community, and the sheep farming and all these things. So it was part that, and I wanted her to come from a background of her parents were, gentry. They're not quite aristocracy. They're gentry, they're wealthy, they're farmers, they're, but it's that kind of landed gentry. That's kind of her background. And, also getting to take her back. I'm big on setting. So to be able to get to use the Yorkshire Dales in that way, and, to explore that, and to also be able to, take her out of London. I was always planning on going back home and having a really different setting than we normally see her in London. So those are all kind of the things that contributed to me deciding to use Yorkshire.
Yeah, great. Yeah, actually, I've been to York too, and I actually have been to the Dales. So,
have you? Oh,
yeah, it's as special as they show it on, like you said, all creatures great and small.
Have you been to the Lake District?
I have not.
A little bit. Okay. I think of it as it's the same way. I mean, if you've never been there, it's really hard to capture in words. It just is. It's breathtakingly beautiful, and the colors, and it's just, it's amazing. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Because I'm actually setting my current book there.
Oh.
And it took me, like you were saying, trying to describe, I think it took me like 2 hours to write a paragraph.
I know.
To capture it. It's just,
so this is not right. This is not working. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But if you've been there, or in any part of the Dales, like you said, the moors or York or anything, it really gets into you. I don't know. It's a special place. So I was excited to see that this book was set there, because it is a special place. Oh, I'm going to use my readers there we go. I can read my. One of the things that I was interested too is, and we were talking a little bit earlier before our audience joined us, is that all the Verity Kent books are set in 1919. So I was curious again, why 1919 and not 1918 or 1920, or, why 1919?
Right. So it's really hard. It takes a level, a depth of knowledge to write about things happening within something like a war when there's been so much written about it. You really have to find that crevice where, you have to dive into that research so deeply, but also you have to find that crevice where there's not a lot known. I mean, that you can really be fictionalize things. And I was hesitant about, I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want to mess up the history, but also it's really tricky. I admire the people who write series that are set during a war. And I wanted her to be an agent and in the field, and how, to be able to work out, how am I going to do a mystery when she's worrying about dodging German secret police and all these things, very tricky. Plus, I always have a strong romantic element to my mysteries, to my series. And during a war, it's so hard to have a romance. It just is, because the main thing is the war in everyone's lives. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, okay, well, I want this war to be a really big part of their lives. I want it to be a big part of who they are and what's made them who they are. But I thought to myself, okay, it would be smarter to set this immediately after, or very soon after, because then the focus is shifting. It's still affecting them. And I found, as I was doing my research, I really loved it, because I got to explore how the war affected all these different people in different ways, in ways that a lot of times we don't even think about. And, and there's such variety of experiences of all the people that lived in that time. And I could still carry over and still have flashbacks and still, use the war in her spying, but also get to explore that. And, a lot of people have read the series. They understand that in the very first book, we believe that her husband Sidney's dead.
Right.
Well, he comes back in the first book, and spoiler, and he's the main character. And I really liked the idea. So in my Lady Darby series, my other series, she meets her significant other in the first book. So it's really the journey of theirs from the very beginning. Well, I liked the idea of exploring a relationship, a romance from a different angle, and a marriage in crisis. I mean, because they were married right when the war began, and then separated for 4.5 years by war and by him believing he was dead, him having to feign his death. And, and they both are keeping so many secrets, and they've lived such different lives. They're such different people. And how do you rebuild a marriage? How do you come back together should you even try after all of that's come between you? And so it gave me a lot of emotional resonance to deal with, to work with for the story, and to help shape the mysteries, and help shape the character arcs and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Like you said, I've read a lot of historical mysteries that have the romantic element. And this is probably one of the first times I've seen that, like you said, the marriage in crisis. And it does add a lot more complexity and to the conflict, that they're trying to deal with all these outside influences, but then they have to, they're supposed to be able to come together and work as a team, but then they have these conflicts within their own marriage.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's like, I like it too, because like they've always been, the physical attraction's still there. Like that part,
that's obvious.
When you're first starting out, that's one of the things you're dealing with, you know what I mean? Especially in these historicals, but that they're past that. That's not the problem. It's everything else. And so it just lets me shift it, I guess. And it lets me go, be more, not racy, but just more, my books are all, the door closes, but you know what I mean? They're more, I don't know, whatever the right word is, they're in the middle of their marriage. They're, so they're very into each other.
Right. And with mysteries, you always have to kind of keep the reader kind of guessing who you can trust, which narrator, which point of view, what, and I think your characters, Verity and Sydney are also doing that with, like you said, within their marriage. Can they even trust each other?
Right.
And then how do they go forward and, and then, thwarting Lord Ardmore, and, how do they do all this while they still don't quite trust each other either, because of all the secrets that they're holding? And
exactly.
So, it's really fun.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed you mentioned in your book, and we're getting a little more serious here, in your acknowledgments, was you were talking about how difficult it was for you during the pandemic to write this book. Do you want to talk a little bit more to that?
Yeah. So, everyone struggled in their own ways. We all acknowledge that. And, creative types, artists, writers have all struggled in that unique way, trying to be creative and put things out when we're living in such stress, and it's really hard to be creative. There's all kinds of studies about how stress affects creativity and all that. And the late last year, I actually had more trouble as the year went on, and we got into autumn, and I just really struggled, and I didn't really understand why it was so hard for me to write this book in particular, and until I finished. And then I realized that part of it was that I was grieving in my own way and trying to process that grief, and I was writing about a character processing her grief. Mm-hmm. And so it ended up being really cathartic for me once it was done, but it was gut-wrenching in the process, because all of us are grieving the life we used to have, our innocence, what we believed about people that we discovered is not true or different, even about ourselves, that we were different. So whether we were grieving the loss of a loved one, we're still grieving other things. And so this book is really a lot about grief, and it's about the different ways that other people process grief. All of the characters in it process grief in different ways. Right. And whether we're willing to be understanding of someone else and how they process their grief or not. And so, I have heard from some readers, and that's really touched me, that they've said that they got it, that when they were reading it, it really helped them. Those are the most precious emails, like that something touched them in a way that, you hope that it does, and you hope it means something to someone. And that's what I hope for readers, this book in particular, that maybe it helps them through something in a small way that, they didn't even necessarily know that needed help to get through. So, because it helped me. So I hope it's a little bit of a gift in that way. So,
yeah. We had a question from a reader, an audience member, sorry, and said, how much older than Verity is Sydney?
So Sydney is 5 years older, I believe. Yes, I think that's right. Or is it 6? I think it's 5 years older. he went to school with her oldest brother. I think it's 5. I'm pretty sure it's 5. Yeah. So when he first met her, she was this, scrawny. She talks about this. She was this scrawny 11-year-old, I think, when she first met him, and she fell for him, And then he comes back later when she's 17, and she looks very different.
Kind of reminds me of Elizabeth and Philip. They met when she was quite young, but was meant to be, right? So
they grow up, and yeah.
Okay, this is one of the things I always like to ask because it's fun to know. But obviously you have to do a ton of research for your historical novels. And I'm always curious what is either the strangest or funniest or most bizarre thing you ever did in the name of research.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, I think this is always funny to me when I explain this to people. When I'm writing like fight scenes, I guess you call them, I'm frequently making my husband act them out with me. I'll be stand up. Okay, now pretend you're thrusting a knife at my gut, and I'm what? I'm trying to figure out whether this works or not, And I know that if people could peek in our window, they'd be like, what are these people doing?
Do we need to call 911?
I know. And I know writers joke about this all the time, but seriously, the stuff that we look up for research, if the FBI was monitoring our computer, they'd be like, what is wrong with these people? I dove way too deep into figuring out how projectile bombs worked out of World War I planes, trying to figure out the mechanisms and everything, because it was not easy to find. I'm sure they were if somebody was watching, but all those kind of things. I know you've done some really fun stuff also for your research. I
have, yeah.
Yeah, especially with horses, right? Because the horses are a big part of your new series. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I used to write horses when I was young. And there's a difference of writing horses when you're a teenager or, a kid and a teenager to when you're a 40-something person who hasn't done it in 30 years. I thought, well, I really need to get back up on the horse, right? So, yeah, I actually went to Kentucky because my main character's from Kentucky. And we went to stayed in a bed and breakfast, and the lady runs horseback riding along with the bed and breakfast. So the whole family got to enjoy this outing.
Fun.
But what happened was I made the mistake of telling her that I used to ride when I was a kid. So she put me on the biggest, strongest horse she had. I don't even, hands wise, this animal was not a person one, but it was huge. And then of course she put my daughter on this little pony. I was like, I want the pony. And then she put me in the back. So I was like a lone ranger in the back. Everybody was ahead of me. And of course, then she called out. It was I think it was August, and the horseflies. You always hear of horseflies.
Oh gosh, horseflies are awful. We have them around here.
Well, growing up, in New York, we called a horsefly, and it was like this little thing that was really annoying and would bite you. But yeah, they were this big. And so she said, well, if you see a horsefly on the horse, swat at it.
So then they're going to come at you.
Right. Well, no, but so I'm trying to stay on the horse. I'm trying to stay in the saddle. And then she also had me writing with in English. And I'd never written English before. But that was one of the reasons why I was doing it for research, because all my characters in 1905, they'd all be writing English in England, and so I had to learn how to do this in my mind. I need to learn how to do this. So I'm trying to hold the reins the way I don't know how to do on this big, huge horse, and then with the horse flies, and then she sends us down into this ravine. And just as we're going down the ravine, a horsefly bites my horse, and it rears. And then flaps back down because we're going down this, 30-degree angle ravine. And I took everything I had to stay in the saddle.
Oh my goodness.
And when I got off, I thought, okay, I've learned something today.
I can use this in the book.
That's right. I said, I'm going to kill somebody off this way because it's pretty darn easy. But yeah, it was fun. That's just one of those things. Oh, okay. This is another thing that's fun, just for readers' sake, is, they read your books and they get to know Verity and Sydney and all the characters. But can you tell us a little bit about a day in the life of Annalie Huber?
Okay, so yeah, sure. I have 2 young daughters, so a lot of my days revolved around that. So I would say a normal weekday, I get up with my daughter at 6 a.m. I get my second grader on the bus, get her on the bus, and then I get to work around 7:15 or so. And my husband and I, fortunately, we both work from home right now. Our schedules have shifted a lot since COVID started. We used to have a babysitter that came, and we don't have that now. And but so he watches our youngest daughter in the morning until she goes to preschool at noon. And I get to work, if I'm lucky, until about 2 o'clock. And then I go get her from preschool, and then I get the second grader off the bus, and then I'm in mom mode until the evening. And then we have dinner, and then we whatever. And every day, I mean, like, sometimes they have ballet, sometimes they have other things. So those are always in the afternoon. So it's always different. And then if I'm lucky, the girls are in bed by 8, and I have a couple hours to either get more work done or to relax or, do something else, something fun, depending. Yeah. In our writers' lives, it's like when we have a deadline, we tend to be working all the time. So that a lot of times depends how close am I to my deadline, and how far am I behind? Because I'm always behind in writing the book. So that dictates a lot. So yeah. So that's, I guess, my normal day. Super exciting.
Well, it's good for our readers to know sometimes our lives are not as exciting as what we write. Right?
I know. And I mean, our writing day, a lot of it's writing, this. It's writing, but it's also, there's so much else that goes into it. I mean, it's all the promo and the social media and the answering the emails and the writing promo articles and doing research and plotting. And I mean, there's like a million things. So, it sounds like, okay, I get this huge chunk of writing time, but really I don't. So, yeah.
Yeah. You look up and you go, oh no, I barely got, half a scene written. I've got to go.
Yeah.
Where did the time go? Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. Whoop, we've got another audience question. How far in time do you plan to take this series? So far, all the novels are set in 1919.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm working on book 6 right now, which is in spring 1920. And then I can tell you the next 3 books after that will also be set in 1920 because I have specific events in mind that are historical. So they kind of have to stay within those parameters. And then I'm not sure. I have not plotted beyond book 9 of the Verity Kent series. So it kind of depends on, do readers want more or not? And kind of where my creativity goes from there. Because I have a destination, a character arc in mind for the end of book 9, and then we'll see. So
okay,
I guess that answers the question. So not very far in the history, not very far forward in history, but a lot is going to happen because a lot does happen in 1920.
Yeah, so you have contracted through 9. Is that what you
said? Yes, I just signed a contract for the next 3. So yep, so I get to write to at least book 9. So
good. Readers will like to know that. That's one thing I forgot to do, is because I had to wait during the pandemic. Things got, as you know. And so usually if I sign a contract, it's usually pretty quick around the time that the book that I'm writing that finishes out the contract, I kind of know. And for me, it was 6 months, and I had to wait. And when I finally, got a renewal, I was so beyond it, so like happy, and I just started writing, and all that I forgot to tell anybody.
Oh my goodness!
So I've had just lately, and because I just had a book come out too, and lately I've had several people go, "Is this book the last one, or are there going to be more?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes, there's going to be
funny.
more, 4 or 5 at least."
When is your next? Go ahead and tell us, because I don't know. When does your next one come out?
I don't know. I don't have a release date.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
but it'll probably be next year, right?
Yes, it will be next year because it's due on the 15th of December. So I'm hoping we snuck it in so they'll be able to do it, even though there was a 6-year gap. I'm hoping that they'll be able to sneak it into 2022. Yeah.
Gotcha. So maybe hopefully autumn.
Yes,
autumn.
Because I even usually I take a year to write your books, write your book, and this time I only gave myself like 7 or 8 months, hoping that it will, squeeze into the next year because of that 6 month delay. So
right.
Which makes me wonder, how long does it take you to write a book?
So it depends, and I always say it depends because it depends on how much research I have to do. Some books require more than others, this. So I would say on average, I give myself 6 months to write a book, including all the research. So yeah. So I've gotten faster as I go, and interestingly enough, once I really get into the first draft, it only takes me like 2 or 3 months, just because I just go. The other months, it's the research and the prep and figuring it all out. There's so much figuring it all out, and then the ending, editing, and changing things and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I've gotten down to it's about 6 months.
So. That's really good. So I know do we have the same editor? Do you know?
Do Wendy?
We both have Kensington. No, I'm not with you. So we both have Kensington. So, but obviously editors are different. So my editor requires kind of a detailed outline before. So do you have to write an outline, or do you write an outline, or how does your process work that way?
Yeah, so I'm finding I don't think this happens very often. I've gotten really lucky that my editors gotta just let me go. I have to turn in like a back cover synopsis, like, gosh, I don't know, a year and a half before like 6 months before the book's due, around then. So it's about a year and a half before it's actually going to be published. They want me to turn in, to let them know, what is this book going to be about, and what do we need to do for the cover and all that kind of stuff. Right. But other than that, they just kind of trust me to just do it. So, and that's for my, my other series is with Berkeley. So I've been really lucky and fortunate, and I work better having that room, because I find that my plot actually shifts so much while I'm writing that if I had to hammer it down, I think I would hate it. Like, it just wouldn't be as good. I don't know. That's just my process. But yeah, I'm really lucky. I think that they do, because I think most authors do have to turn in a much more detailed, I don't know. I guess maybe I've proved that, like, I'm not going to botch it too bad if I, so I think if I turned in something and it was a hot mess, then I wouldn't get that leverage anymore. I wouldn't get that leeway anymore. Right. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, because I usually don't have too many edits. So they know I usually turn in such a pretty clean manuscript. So I think that's why I get away with it. So
do you still plot, do you still kind of hammer out a plot, or are you more of a pantser kind of person?
I do. I call myself a plotzer because I'm really such a middle of the road. Yeah. I mean, like, I do have an outline. I know, all the turning points and all the major things, and what the general character arc and the mystery arc and the the romance arc, and I know so many 5 or so suspects, and I mean, like, I have all of that figured out, but I leave it pretty kind of hazy towards the end, because I find as I'm writing it shifts and changes so much that and I like it. It's like, it's a process, and it lets my brain be really creative. And, you know, I find that I always come up with stuff better stuff in the middle than I did at the beginning. So, so yeah, it's kind of, and then like when I'm about more like 60 to 80% way through the book, I have to stop and like then replot the ending as I figured out what's changed. And so then I go, and then as I get towards the end, I figure out who the murderer is. Sometimes I know it earlier, and sometimes I don't. It's like, what's going to be the best, you know?
Yeah.
And then when I do edits, I shift everything and I move and I, you know, whatever I need to do to smooth it all over. So
yeah. Well, it's funny because, like you said, I have to turn in an outline that's, you know, detailed outline, but that doesn't stop me from doing just what you said.
Well, that's good to know. So if I ever have to,
I turned in a manuscript, and my editor said, "Huh, I don't remember that being the killer." Oops. Because I just 6 weeks out from my deadline, I changed my killer. So, you know, it just, and then the current book I'm writing right now, I just decided, you know, I'm about 2/3 of the way, like you said, 60-80% in. And I thought, you know, this guy really needs to die. I need to kill him off, because that's just got to happen. So now, like you said, now I've got to replot the entire last third of the book.
but sometimes you just have this light bulb go off where your character tells you, no, I'm going to do this. And you're just like, oh, that's so much better, you know, or it just takes it in a different way. And you just have to go with it, because that's what writing is. It's all creativity. It's all, you know, so yeah.
So that's why I really think all writers, no matter how much of a plotter they think they are, I think we're all a little bit pantsers at heart. So we've got some more audience questions. Let me get to those. Let's see. It says, one of them says, Verity resolved her issues with her family in this book. Are we going to see Sidney deal with his family problems? Also, do you have plans for Etta and Gordy?
So I guess I can say yes to all of that, but I can't tell you exactly when. I'm not going to give that away. So, but yeah, I definitely want to delve into Sydney's family, and I definitely want to do more with Gordy and Etta and the issues there. I think that the struggle for me right now is that the history that they're involved with gets really heated up, and so I got to figure out the right timing to work all that in and not have too much that I'm throwing at one plot. So, so yeah, but definitely, yeah, I will be exploring both of those things, but I can't tell you exactly which book it'll be in.
Or how, right?
Yes, exactly.
And then it says, will we see more of the supporting characters? I think Daphne would be an interesting character to explore more, and would like to see her more involved and find a partner. So what about Daphne?
Same kind of thing. It's so funny. I love all my secondary characters. I do this in both of my series. I make these secondary characters and I fall in love with them. And then it's like, I want to have all of them in the book. It's like, you can't, and then have a murder mystery. You know what I mean? It's like, I just want to write a book about just my little cast and their lives, and, you know. So yeah, I would like to do more with Daphne. I would love to find her a significant other, or maybe explore her and Verity's cousin. There's a little bit of a tease of that kind of at the beginning of the book. But yeah, once again, it's making it. I've set myself a challenge with Ardmore and that plot, and also the history that's coming up. So it's going to be, figuring out when is the perfect time and if it all then been. But yes, I would love to have some more focus on the secondary characters and do some more with them and their lives and expand them.
Have you ever thought of doing like a spin-off? You know how Lord Jim was a spin-off from the Outlander series. So
right,
having a spin-off of one of your more popular secondary characters.
Gosh, I haven't thought about it with the Verity series yet. I have, like, the Lady Darby series. Every once in a while, I've toyed with the idea of doing something with Bonnie Brock, my Edinburgh head of the gang in Edinburgh. He's such a rascal. Or even, there's some other characters, but I don't want to go all into that. But I don't know, maybe it's a possibility. But right now I'm just loving writing Verity so much. And I'm so into her this storyline that, yeah. So, but yeah, possibly for the future.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I have any more questions. Okay. Is there anything that your readers would be surprised to know about you? Something that isn't commonly known about.
Gosh, I'm trying to think. I'm sure there is. I'm just gonna blank on what. I mean, like, gosh. Okay, so I mean, a lot of people do know that my degree's in music. I mean, music performance was my major in college.
I didn't know
like
that.
Opera. So, like, I don't know. Every once in a while, they're like, sing some opera, and I'm like, I'm not gonna just break into opera, but yes, I could. I mean, let's see. So music's a big part of my life still. I'm trying to think. Goodness gracious. No, I'm like, what? I was a big softball player. I still love to play softball. My daughter's just started, so that's a lot of fun to get to share that with her. Yeah, so I was always big on that. Goodness, I have huge families. My family and my husband's family both have a lot of siblings, and it's just, they're fun to just all gather. And I'm really lucky too with my family, my extended family. Like, I know my cousins and stuff, we all get together, aunts and uncles and stuff. And, you know, a lot of people don't have that. And so I know all that. It's just a lot of fun. I mean, like, yeah. So I'm used to writing. I like to write families and siblings and all those dynamics. And it's because I'm used to them, and cousins, because I'm used to them. And I know them and all the different dynamics and how they can affect your life in different ways. And so maybe that's not a surprise, though. I'm trying to think of something really shocking, like, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, you'll have to think about it.
I know. I need to think of something really juicy for if I ever get to ask that question again.
Yeah. Well, like, I worked with primate monkeys. So most people don't know that about me. That's always my go-to.
Well, your degree is in, is it anthropology?
No, my undergrad is in biology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I knew it was science. I was like,
Science.
I was thinking you got the science. So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you were saying that about how your family dynamics influences your writing, and it's funny because I'm it's like a light bulb just went on in my head, but I never thought about it. But my characters because I wrote a previous series and she was an orphan, and now my current series, she's an only child. And of course, I have a brother, so I'm not either one of those things, but I tend to think of, just like a single woman in the family, like not having a lot of family, not having, and I never thought of it, that somehow I think of myself in that kind of enclosed, instead of inclusive, kind of that exclusive group.
I mean, it's just, I think that, well, it is funny how your own worldview can affect how you end up creating a character and plotting, just because you're just used to that. You know what I mean? And so,
yeah.
I mean, like, to me, it's like just like, normal to just throw in all these cousins and siblings and whatever, because that's what I'm just used to. And so, the opposite, I would be, I have to really be conscious about thinking about. And so, like, for example, Sydney, his parents are very absent, and he has one sister who's kind of just doesn't really care. And like, so it's a very different situation. And even, well, both of my heroes, that's funny. I have a very opposite heroes, because my Gage is an only child, and he's only got his father. And we're going to explore his family some more too. I know people want to know that.
So your women are from big families and your men are from small families.
Which is funny, because my husband is from a big family too. So, but I think I like exploring the dynamic. So maybe that's why I do that, so that there's
makes sense
the opposite, and playing off of that, and all of that. So yeah, that's interesting though. Yeah.
Because I always end up, it seems like, bringing in like a much, like an elderly woman character, at least one, like an old, because I was 30 years old when my great grandmother passed away, and she was one of, I think, 10 kids or something. And I knew all but one of her sisters. So I had like great aunts all in their 80s and 90s, my whole childhood and early adulthood. And so to me, I mean, I'm even named after one of them. So to me, to not have that, really not just like a grandmother, but a really old grandmother, in your life just seems really strange. So of course, even my character now that has this horror, her mom's not around, and her father's this horrible father, but at least she has her great aunt. It's like it's funny. And it's just like you said, that's the way my worldview works. So
that's really special though, that you got to know, that you knew all of the, I was fortunate. I knew all my grandparents, and I knew several of my great grandparents, but like my younger siblings didn't get to know all of those. And so, and they've all passed away now. I mean, like, so my children have no great grandparents, so, so that's really special. Like, I think about that sometimes. I wish that my kids could have met my grandparents, so.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if I have any more questions. Let's see. Oh, this is another one. We were talking about research before, and we know that you, like I said before, you do tons of research, and of course you can't use it all. You may tuck some away for the future. And like you said, you already know 1920 holds these wonderful tidbits of events that you're going to capture in your next books. But maybe you can share a few things that you've come across that you never have been able to use, and you don't think you probably will, but just kind of are fun and interesting and kind of inspired you?
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. Oh my goodness. I've read several just fascinating memoirs of people that were either soldiers, officers during the war, or who were part of spy networks that were spies themselves, or, ran the spy networks. And there's always these little anecdotes of stuff that are in there that some of them are like so unbelievable. You're like, this can't really have happened. I always recommend those kind of books. I'm trying to think of specific things that I haven't used or don't want to use.
Right. You can't.
Give it away, you know what I mean? Yeah, of course. But yeah, I mean, well, and I don't want to be too gruesome too. I mean, sometimes you read these officers' memoirs and it's like they become so inured to all the suffering and this death that's around them that like they're just walking down the road and they'll write about that there's a dead soldier and there's an animal, and it's just like, it's gross. It's completely gross to us, but to them, they're just writing like in their journal, and they're not even, because they've seen so much carnage. I mean, it's crazy. That shocked me. I think the first time I came across that, and I was like, oh my gosh. And like, it didn't even faze them because they'd been there so long. Goodness gracious. And there's all kinds of hijinks that still happen in London, even after. I mean, we're getting into the roaring 20s. It's, the backlash of these people that trying to come to grips with everything that happened. And so they're trying to drown out all this pain, you know what I mean? Because it's before psychology. I mean, psychology existed, but it's before people really used it and then really like you didn't go to the psychiatrist, that was like the woo-woo weird thing, so, you just sucked it up and moved on, and you couldn't really suck it up. So you drank and you danced and you whatever, took drugs. I was really shocked by how many people took opium and morphine, cocaine, all this stuff in this era. I mean, high upper class, people, they're the proper society people, but then they're going to like morphine parties, you know what I mean? So, that was really surprising to me. And this is around the time when they start to pass laws and things about it. But, yeah, I mean, there's always shocking things to learn, and I'm just trying to, I don't know. I read a really fascinating book recently. It's called The Road Less Traveled. It's a nonfiction. And it's by Philip Zelikow. I think I'm saying it right. And it's excellent. And it examines through primary documents, letters, journals, all these things, how the war was almost ended in late 1916, early 1917. It came so close. and then it didn't happen. And it just like reading that. I mean, like I was reading it and I was actually like screaming at the page because I was just like, oh my, no, like, because you knew what was coming and how the world changed so much. I mean, if the war had ended then with peace without victory, it would have been so different. It wouldn't have been 2 more years of slogging out and all these people dying and revolution in Russia and people starving in Germany and then becoming bitter. And then, I mean, chances are we would not have had World War II. The map would have been completely different. There would have been so many different things. And so reading that was really affected me. And it was a really fascinating look at it. And you know, yeah, so I highly recommend it. Anyway, so that's always shocking when you come across something that this is not commonly known. And yeah, it's crazy.
Got a few more comments. One is Allison said, do we find out about Verity's maid secret book yet?
Oh yeah. Yes, you're talking about her secret. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't find out yet in this book. We will eventually find out why. Yeah, she's very secretive and doesn't want to talk about her life. But yeah, that's not in this book. Sadie, I was blanking. I was gonna call her Sarah, but her name's Sadie. But yes, that's coming, and I know what it is. I just haven't divulged it yet. I haven't had Verity to discover it yet. So
okay. And then it says, let's see. Is Verity going to be decorated for her work after World War II intelligence people did, I believe?
Yeah, there are a few World War One women who worked for British intelligence that were decorated after World War One. Just a few. I do not have plans at the moment to have Verity be decorated, just because of a lot of women who were in active spying roles were really belittled. And I talk about this in the book. There was an extreme double standard about that women couldn't really handle it, that they would fall in love with their mark and then they would whatever. And so there's a lot of her name in the intelligence circles, even though the chief sticks up for her and all that stuff. The other intelligence circles that are now taking over and in control, you know, because of the influence of Ardmore, also that, you know, she's not in the position that they would decorate her at this point. So we'll see. That's a we'll see question. Answer.
Yeah. Okay. So it says, do you find it hard keeping the time frames for your 2 series separate, especially differences in language and technology?
I don't. I think because it is such a difference. I mean, there's only 90 years apart, but things change so much, and the language is even so different. Like there's like just such a rhythm to. I mean, it's very formal in 1830, and then there's a rhythm almost to this 1920, that usually once I start writing, I know if I'm whose heroine's voice I'm speaking in. It's almost immediate. And so I don't know. It's just a shift. I guess I would just call it. I make a shift in my thinking, in my subconscious, where I'm writing from. And so I usually don't struggle with that. Every once in a while, like I'll be writing, and then I think it was in book 3, Penny for Your Secrets. I was writing, and I had to back up a couple chapters because I was like, oh wait, they had fingerprinting. Like I'd forgotten that they could do fingerprinting at this point, and they would have, you know. And so I had to go back and kind of shift some stuff. But I think that's the only time that I've had that happen. Usually, I don't know. It's just the mindset I get into when I'm writing that I just and because I write a straight first draft in one. I don't work from both and go back and forth. I'm sure if I went back and forth, that would be a nightmare. But yeah, so I usually don't have trouble.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. If you are working on 2 books at the same time.
I mean, I'm never writing a book at the same time, like the first draft, but I may be doing like copy edits or final page proofs or something like that while I'm working on the next one. But yeah, I'm never writing. I don't think I could. I honestly don't. I think it would be too confusing. It would take me way too long to make the shift. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, definitely. So we were talking about I know we've been talking about the Verity Kent series, but I'm curious. Your Lady Darby. I'm saying that right? Lady Darby.
Yes.
I want to say Darcy because Darcy. But Darby. Why did you pick 1830s for that one?
So for my Lady Darby series, her background, some of what she brings to her investigations is her knowledge of medicine, which
Right.
I deliberately crafted her backstory that way because I wanted her to have, she's very awkward. She's not the social butterfly. So she's not going to go just like talk to society and find out everything. So what could she bring to an investigation? I thought, well, what about medical knowledge? And so she, we learned that her first husband was an anatomist, and he forced her. He was writing a definitive anatomy textbook. This was before like Gray's Anatomy, the famous Gray's Anatomy we think of. And so he forced her to. He's a miser. And he forces her to sketch the dissections because she's a very gifted portrait artist. And so she gains her medical knowledge by listening to him and all these things and sketching and all these things. And so when I decided to give her that backstory, I started looking into things, and I'd been leaning towards early 19th century. And then I realized this was the era of the body snatchers. Burke and Hare is 1829, who were the men that were selling bodies, killing people off the street in Edinburgh and selling them to the anatomists. And then they got away with it for 16 bodies before they were caught, at least 16. And so there's this cataclysm right then of this era. And we know that the Anatomy Act is coming up in 1832, where they finally changed the law. But I thought, okay, this fits perfectly in with what I want to happen for Kira. And she's such this figure of scandal when it's realized what she's been doing, or her husband dies and it comes out what she's been doing. And so I had to set it then. It was just like the perfect time period. And then when I was doing the research, I realized how much changes in that era. There's so many different laws that change because it's such a social upheaval at that time. The Catholic Emancipation, the Reform Act, and changing how the way the voting was done and the districts were distributed and all that. And I mean, there's just a lot of different things. And the Industrial Revolution is really picking up another notch. And so it gave me so much good drama to work with. I mean, that's what we all strive for, that that we got to have a conflict. We have to have conflict to write a story. So yeah.
Interesting. Well, we're coming up towards the end. If anybody has any final questions for Anna, make sure you pop them in the ask your question or put them in the chat, and we can let's see if I have anything. Let's see. Oh, I think we've gone through all of my questions. I don't know.
So tell us a little bit. Are you working on the new Stella and Lindy? Like, tell us a little bit about what we can expect for the next one.
Oh, okay. So, in book 3 that just came out, which I just happen to have a copy here, Murder in Keyhaven Castle. Stella and Lindy. I don't want to spoil anything, but they kind of complete an arc everybody is looking forward to. And so the next book, the first 3 books are all set in the New Forest region of Hampshire, England, which is my map back here. And I decided for book 4 to kind of go somewhere else. And it's interesting that you said the same thing about Yorkshire, because that's what I did, is I put my characters went to York. So they did the exact same thing. Except they weren't coming from London, but they were coming from South Hampshire. So they're going to York, and they're staying at a hotel. So I do have a title for the book. It's called Murder at the Majestic Hotel.
Ooh.
And so they basically, the premise is they show up. They've rented a room. It's supposed to be the best suite in the city. And there's some old man staying in their room. Somebody gave him the key. And the next morning, that old man's found dead. So, not the best of holidays for the two of them. So, yeah. We went to York. My whole family went, I think it was Christmas 18. And it was so wonderful. It was magical to be there at Christmas time and just.
Oh yeah, I bet there's so much to do in York. I've been to York, and like there's just so much. It's a great little city, and there's so much to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's such a walkable city, and I mean, we didn't even stay
Lots
within
of
the city
history.
walls, and we just, we could walk everywhere. We just parked our car and just walked everywhere. So many museums, and it goes back to the Roman times, and they still have, mosaics and just all kinds of there's even a few pieces of the original wall, and it's a fabulous. And then of course the Vikings came along, and they just recently discovered a whole Viking settlement under the city streets, and it's a really wonderful city. I tell everybody, if you haven't been, you have to, because it's just,
oh my goodness, you can pack so much in, and just it's a good one.
It is a good one. Yeah. Oh, I see one more question from an audience member. Make sure we get that in. Okay. Allison wants to know, how much enjoyable reading do both get to do? Oh, I guess that's me too. So how much do you actually get to do fun reading?
Oh my, not as much as I'd like. Especially if I'm really having to do a lot of research. I try to work ahead on my research, honestly, so that I'm not taking so much time, since my schedule's tight. So lately I have not done as much, because I've been doing a lot of nonfiction, but I do try to do fun reading, and it's a lot of fun. We get asked to do, we get to read early stuff, to do endorsements and stuff, which is always fun. It's kind of like, ooh, I got to read this, 6 months before everybody else, but I mean, oh my goodness, I don't know. It depends. It depends on where I'm at in writing a book, I would say. I mean, I read a lot, because writers love to read. So probably more than the average person, but less than I would like to. So
yeah. I find that I really haven't been reading as much. I think that's one of the things that happened to me during the pandemic, is that I've struggled to find books that capture me and keep me going. And I've started a lot of books, but haven't finished a lot, which is very unusual for me.
Right.
But I'm really enjoying your book, so that's fun to read the latest Verity Kent. And there's a historical mystery writer named Ruth Downey. She writes their Roman. Her series is the Medicus. The first book is called Medicus, and he's a Roman doctor, and who's been in an outpost called Britannia. So it's set in England, but during the Roman era. And yes, one of the books is set in York. And those are one of the few that I've kind of binged through.
That's cool.
Yeah, but
I don't think I've read those.
Yeah, I'll
have to check them out.
Very clever, witty. The characters are just, you just fall in love. One of them is a slave. The main female character is a uppity, smart alecky. She knows what she's talking about. Highlander slave. So,
I love it. That's great.
You'd really like her. That's about. Besides my fellow writers and stuff, I haven't been able to read much. So thank you, Anna, for giving me something fun to read. So.
You're welcome. I was gonna say, early in the pandemic, I didn't read as much. Like the first, I don't know how many months. Like I just couldn't, like you were saying, and then I gradually have come back to it, or I was forced back to it, maybe, and then I came back to it. I understand what you're saying.
Yep. Well, I think that concludes our time. We're on the hour. And so thank you, everyone, for joining Anna and I.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you, Barbara's. And don't forget the button.
Yep. You still can. And I think they've got links in the chat that you can to link to get the book, and you get your 10% off. And thank you, Anna, for spending some time with me. It's been such a long time. We're used to seeing each other in person, and just
next year, hopefully, right? It's like next year. Thank you for hosting me. For moderating, and thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and have a great evening. Bye.